OG in the heart of America. I'm Steve Gruber, saying the things you wish you could. I do it every single day, fighting for you from this foxhole of freedom and defending this great nation from the vipers at every corner. This is the Steve Gruber Show. Free for all Friday. Three big things you need to know right now. Number one, in Georgia, it appears like the case against Donald Trump is falling apart like those elsewhere, as the prosecutor now been ordered into a hearing for misconduct in the case. Not surprised, are you? Number two, the super rich in Davos say tax us more, which of course is easy for them to say because they can play financial games that most people cannot. So why not say it? It doesn't hurt them, it likely hurts you. And number three, it is Free for All Friday. I'm going to get to some comments here in a second about Davos, but first, Free for All Friday means you get to join the conversation. You can call me, 877-310-9966, anywhere in America. Anywhere in the world if you can get through, 877-310-9966. Ask me anything. Tell me anything. Comments on Davos, the open border, the budget, the economy, anything on your mind. 877-310-9966. We'll line those calls up, but first this. Speaking of Davos, we've heard the blathering lunatics going on about how they know what is best for the world and mostly what is best for everyone else on the planet. Can you imagine getting up every day and setting out to tell everyone else what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do? And can you imagine doing that using completely false narratives about migration, climate change, misinformation, and evil dictators waiting in the wings? While the real threat to the world is exactly those things that are being pursued by you? Seems to me that the greatest projectionism ever witnessed is happening again in Davos, Switzerland this week. But a few people stood up and threw it in their elitist faces over the past few days. People like the new president of Argentina, Javier Milei, who says the socialist collectivist mentality is a failure. And he was terrific. But I must say, the best in show for me goes to the president of the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts, who completely leveled the entire globalist agenda and the false case against former President Donald Trump. And he did it in about 4 or 5 minutes. And I think you should hear it. Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation, was invited to Switzerland, invited to speak there. I'd bet the globalists are now wondering why they did that. Roberts crushed those elites, but first he lays out the guidelines of his message. Here it is. Listen.
The kind of person, and I'll be candid here because I think I've been invited here to be candid. The kind of person who will come into the next conservative administration is going to be governed by one principle, and that is destroying the grasp that political elites and unelected technocrats have over the average person. And if I may, I will be candid and say that the agenda that every single member of the administration needs to have is to compile a list of everything that's ever been proposed at the World Economic Forum and object all of them wholesale. Anyone not prepared to do that and take away this power of the unelected bureaucrats and give it back to the American people is unprepared to be part of the next conservative administration.
I completely agree. Reject everything that came from these people. Once he was rolling, he just kept picking up speed. He leaned into the list of the things that must be targeted first by President Trump or whomever has the chance to dismantle this globalist mess. He had very specific items to deal with, things that he says Donald Trump will fight for to protect average Americans. Listen.
It's laughable that you would, or anyone would describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy. It's equally,
standing up for it.
It's equally laughable to use the word dictatorship at Davos and aim that at President Trump. In fact, I think that's absurd. But I'm going to step aside from that constructive criticism and instead answer your question.
Yep.
And I'm going to be substantive here. President Trump, if he's the next president, for that matter, I think whoever the next conservative president is going to take on the power of the elites, which I mentioned earlier. But the thing that I want to drive home here, the very reason that I'm here at Davos, is to explain to many people in this room and who are watching, with all due respect, nothing personal, but that you're part of the problem. Political elites tell the average people on 3 or 4 or 5 issues that the reality is X, when in fact reality is Y. Take immigration. Elites tell us that open borders and even illegal immigration are okay. The average person tells us in the United States that both rob them of the American way of life. They're right. President Trump will take that on behalf of the average American.
On behalf of the average American, the average global citizen, because America fights for the world. We have to reject this globalist, collectivist mindset and nonsense. Unelected bureaucrats. What about crime? And climate change, of course, that's the big one, right? Crime is there, but what about climate change? Here's what he said about that.
Elites also tell us that public safety isn't a problem in big American cities. Just travel to New York or Washington or Dallas, Texas. The average person will tell you that the lack of public safety damages not just the American way of life, but their life. President Trump will take that on. Thirdly, I guess the favorite at the World Economic Forum is climate change. Elites tell us that we have this existential crisis with so-called climate change, so much so that climate alarmism is probably the greatest cause for mental health crisis in the world. The solutions, the average person know, based on climate change are far worse and more harmful and cost more human lives, especially in Europe during the time that you need heating, than do the problem and the problems themselves.
He just kept hitting it out of the park, didn't he? He just kept crushing it. Next, the Chinese Communist Party, that's global threat to all of us around the world. Listen to this one.
The fourth, China. The number one adversary, not just to the United States, but to free people on planet Earth. Not only do we at Davos not say that, we give the Chinese Communist Party a platform. Count on President Trump ending that nonsense.
Ending that nonsense. He kept going to Donald Trump. And finally, this.
And fifth, as we sit here, another supranational organization, the World Health Organization, is discussing foisting gender ideology upon the global South. These are practices that are under review, if not being rejected, by countries in Northern Europe. The new president, especially if it's President Trump, will, as you like to say, trust the science. He will understand the basic biological reality of manhood and womanhood. And do you know why? Not because of retribution, not because he's a dictator, but because he has the power of the American people behind him. And it's connected to Senator Portman's excellent point that in addition to needing a vigorous executive, we look forward to having the popular will inform both the House and Senate in 2025 to pass laws on all of those issues and many others. Ultimately, Robin, I think President Trump, if in fact he wins a second term, is going to be inspired by the wise words of Javier Milei, who said that he was in power not to guide sheep, but to awaken lions. That's what the average American and the average free person on planet Earth wants out of them.
Not to guide sheep, to awaken lions. What a terrific, terrific series of comments. Remarkable, really. By the way, we're going to be having him on the program come Monday. That's the expectation. Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation. Now it's your turn. 877-310-9966. 877-310-9966. Time to be heard, America. Time to speak up and be heard. It's Free for All Friday. We do it every week. Love to hear your voices. So go ahead, get lined up. We've got David, Bonnie, Don, and more coming up after the break here on the Steve Gruber Show. You can also check out stevegruber.com. Send me an email. I'll read those as well after the break.